Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. It's a tremendous honor to have our guest. First time he's on our program. He is a prolific writer, rabbinic figure, so much involved in Jewish life. I'm referring to Rabbi Professor Avraham Steinberg, MD. He's a rabbi, physician, ethicist. He's a winner of the Israeli Prize. He's a worthy citizen of Jerusalem, director of the medical ethics units of Shaare Zedek Medical Center, co-chairman of the Israel National Council of Bioethics. In 1999, he won the Israel Prize for Original Rabbinic Literature for his 7-volume Encyclopedia Halachic Rules of War, which is the medical encyclopedia, was translated into English as the Encyclopedia of Jewish Medical Ethics. Director of Torah Literature Publisher Group Yad HaRav Herzog, head of the editorial board of the Talmudic Encyclopedia, or the Encyclopedia Talmudit. He's written over and edited over 46 books and public reports in 73 volumes, 314 papers and chapters in Israeli international journals and books, over 4,500 extra witness opinions in court cases in pediatric neurology, medical ethics. I don't do justice. I can't even list all his titles, but he's also chairman of the Israeli National Board of Molim, member of the Israeli Chief Rabbinic Committee of Matters Related to the Dead, he serves as an advisor on medical ethics to the Knesset and Chief Rabbinate of Israel. It's a very big honor to have you join us, so thank you for being part of our show.
Thank you for this eulogy.
No, this is not a eulogy to say everything. I only said mix for fun of only a portion. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
But, you're very impressive with all the things that you've done. But I want to focus because everybody's thinking about the war in Israel. And one of the hats you wear, and you wear many, and you deal with medical issues and political issues, religious issues. What are some of the issues you have to face now, especially dealing with the dead, those that were killed on October 7th, and also dealing with the war?
Well, the tragedy was tremendous. I think unprecedented that so many in one day were killed. Soldiers, civilians, women, children, adults, really a tremendous atrocity that was committed. And not only were they killed and murdered, but they were humiliated, they were burned, they were tied to each other, they were shot several times, and indeed, unbelievable. I'm surprised the world is not getting up and I don't know
about it. They don't seem to be bothered so much by it for some reason. I don't understand why.
Right. And in fact, just as a sideline, I'm also involved with interreligious discussions. I'm part of a committee of the Chief Rabbinate of Israel for religions discussions, and we were very much surprised and I would say even upset with the Pope's position on what happened. He failed to condemn what happened on Simchat Torah. He didn't say one word against what happened there. He only talked about stopping terrorism on both sides and equating this type of atrocities that only ISIS and the Nazis did such things to a just war to annihilate those terrorists, which incidentally and not intentionally, some civilians are injured and killed as well, to say that this is terror and this is terror and therefore you have to stop. We were very upset with this. We actually wrote a letter to the Pope. We got a partial response. We are still in touch on that, and I think the world has to stand up and be very, very clear, because it may happen to everyone. It happens to us.
It happens to Jewish people first, and then if they don't pay attention, it happens to other people too. That's a lesson of history. But what did the Pope say?
So now, coming to your initial question, on identifying the victims, usually identifying a dead person is by looking at the body, recognizing who he is, people who know him, especially the face that is marked as unique. And in this way, we can say person X is dead. However, as I mentioned, many of the victims were significantly mutilated, shot in various parts of the body and burned. And to identify them was a tremendous job, took time, which obviously the families were very upset in a way. They wanted answers. Is he alive? Isn't he alive? Is he here? Is he there? What happens to our relative? And it took a long time to identify. So there were two levels of identification. One level is via the three major unique signs of a person, which is the DNA, the fingerprint, and the denture. And both the army regarding soldiers and the forensic medicine center regarding civilians did on each part that was found all these tests to see if this person is indeed the one that we are talking about. Now, if we're talking about DNA identification, the best is if we can get a part of the cadaver with a part of the person that we assume this is the cadaver person that when he was alive. For instance, if we can get his hair from his hairbrush at home, and we take the DNA from the hair, and we take the DNA from his shoulder that is found, or a part of the body that is found, and we compare, that is the best identification means that we have available today. And most poskim, I would say almost all poskim, agree that this is a sign that the person is dead, even to free his wife not to become an aguna. If we can't do that, then we try to compare the DNA of the part of the body that we do have to a close relative, first-degree relative. That is not 100% identity, but it is considered 99.9 maybe, or certainly 99%, which again, according to most poskim, and certainly from a forensic medicine point of view, that is regarded as an identification. However, there were scattered bones that were burned from parts of bodies. And if you, for instance, find a bone of a finger after it was burned, and that's the only part of the person that you can find, identifying it is not yet a sign that the person died, because he may have lost his finger, but he can still be alive. So therefore, we strive to get at least a bone of a part that if the person lost it, he can't live, such as the skull or the upper part of the skeleton or the pelvis, parts that people that lose it can't stay alive. So that is a very meticulous work going on, and to this moment, we still have some unidentified or unidentifiable parts that we don't know if the person is missing, if he is here or if he is in Gaza, because they don't release who they are keeping there, whether alive or dead. So that is one big major issue of identifying. The other one is situations where we don't have a body, but we have other pictures, videos, or intelligence information about a person that we may relate to this information as a sign that he's dead, but his body is in Gaza, and we can't really get to it, and we can't examine it. That is a unique situation that in medicine and in halacha was never discussed. because either you have a body or you don't have a body. If you have a body, you do all the testings that I mentioned and some others. And if you don't have a body, you can't be sure that the person is dead. But here we have something in between. We have pictures, we have intelligence information, we have talks between the terrorists telling what they are doing, and this was intercept, and things of this kind. Because it has to do with intelligence, we that were involved in trying to determine that a person is dead cannot disclose on the details how we reach this conclusion. But for the first time, both medically speaking and halachically speaking, we did pronounce the death of several people without seeing their body. And their body is now kept in Gaza, or maybe even buried in Gaza, but we have enough evidence to say that this person was either dead already and taken as a body to Gaza, or was taken alive and either killed or died in Gaza.
And you mentioned, Rabbi Steinberg, that it's both medically and halakhically the conclusion. I can understand halakhically you came to a conclusion, you saw videos. How does that prove medically that the person is dead?
Right. So I'll give, again, I can't go into too many details, but let's say you see a picture with a gunshot in the forehead. And you see in the picture that the body doesn't move. So to say that he's just comatose and he'll recover from it, but he's taken to Gaza and he'll get no medical attention, that's impossible. So depending on the type of the injury that we can identify in the pictures, we can medically say with certainty that this person can't survive this situation. That's only one example, but there are many such examples of where the intelligence brought to us and the pictures that we saw are medically sufficient to say that this body is not alive, what we see.
Now, is this unanimously accepted by all the Rabbinate in Israel, by the leading poskim, the halachic disciples? Right. How does that work? Is it there consensus, or is there a dissent?
No, so usually what happens is that the medical group is determining whether they feel that medically speaking there's enough evidence to say that the person is dead, and then all these materials come to the chief rabbi of the army if it's a soldier, or the chief rabbi of Israel if it's a civilian, and they discuss all the evidence, and halachically speaking it is sometimes even easier to determine that the person is dead from a halachic point of view, even though in one or two occasions the physicians weren't sure from a medical point of view. So the medical part is much more strict than the halachic part. Obviously, at the end, they come to an agreement.
Our guest is the eminent Rabbi Professor Avraham Steinberg, MD, Rabbi, physician, ethicist, Israel Prize laureate. He has written over so many books, 46 books, public reports in 73 volumes, and sits on so many committees, including medical ethics, and we're discussing his work dealing with war, and we'll also look at the Encyclopedia Talmudit, which has a special volume coming out, which is already out, dealing with war. I was just curious, Rabbi Professor, is that you mentioned that you're also involved in the relationship between different religious groups, and you protested to the Vatican about how it would not acknowledge what happened on October 7th. You got a partial response. What did the Vatican tell you?
Well, the Vatican wrote back to our letter that they do condemn any anti-Semitism. They condemn any atrocities, not specifically talking about what happened in Simchat Torah. I don't know what's their problem to say. Everyone saw it. There are pictures, and it's clear that that's what's happened, but they don't mention it still in the second letter. And obviously that they are for peace, and they want to have peace in Israel and peace in the world, which is certainly a nice thing to strive for, but not always can you get there. And incidentally, they mention that two Catholic women were in a certain area in Gaza, and the area was bombed and they were killed. So they complain about two women that were incidentally killed when the terrorists shot from the same area. So we needed to attack the terrorists, and innocently we killed these two women. Here we are talking about 1,200 people slaughtered, burned, and that is equal to what they feel. We really are hard to understand how this can happen.
Will there be just written correspondence, or will there eventually be some sort of talks between yourself and other members, and let's say members of the Vatican, on this issue?
Well, as I said, there is, I don't know if people know about the Nostra Aetate. That was a document in the 60s that the Holy See published regarding other religions and their relationship to the Catholics. One paragraph, paragraph 4, deals with the relationship with Jews, and they acknowledged that not all Jews are responsible for what they think happened to Jesus, and certainly not Jews that live today, that have nothing to do with what happened there, and therefore we are brothers, and we should keep fraternity, and we should be in good terms, and they deny anti-Semitism. So since this document, a committee was established of mutual relationship between the Chief Rabbinate and the Vatican, and we meet yearly, once in the Vatican and once in Jerusalem. Once we come to the Vatican as a delegation of the Chief Rabbinate, and once their delegation comes to Jerusalem, and we discuss issues that are of mutual interest. We try to avoid discussing deep theological disagreements, because it's clear that we won't get ever to any agreement between us. We have our way, they have their way, but there are many issues that we can deal together. For instance, we had a long discussion about euthanasia and end-of-life issues, that we look on it in a very similar way, different than current medical ethics looks at end-of-life situations. On the other hand, there's nothing in common between them and us regarding the beginning of life. They don't allow abortion in any situation. They don't allow IVF. They don't allow PGD. They don't allow any intervention in the beginning of life, whereas halachically, meeting certain conditions, it might be permissible. So that is something that we don't have a common ground.
Even though, isn't the halacha though more strict with non-Jews than Jews when it comes, let's say, even to abortion?
Yes, abortion is halachically strictly prohibited for non-Jews, and less so for Jews. And I don't know that the time is here to explain how it happens. It's an unusual situation, but there are several such examples.
Now, when you have your meeting, when is it scheduled next? And will this issue regarding Simchat Torah massacre be included in that discussion?
Well, we want to do it. At the moment, we did not yet come to any agreement that we are happy with, that at least condemning what happened and doing something about it throughout the world.
But my question was, there's a meeting scheduled once a year. When is the next meeting scheduled? And will this...
Right. The next meeting is scheduled for June, and this time in the Vatican. At the moment, we are still discussing. I don't want to say anything because it's my opinion. I don't think we should meet unless they will condemn it and unless they will understand that this is an atrocity that everyone has to condemn.
I want to get to, you wear so many different hats. I want to focus on the Talmudic Encyclopedia, where you serve as the head of the editorial board. You came up with a special volume dealing with war, which you want to bring to every army base. Let's look at the fact that Israel, of all countries in the world, has a different standard, where who announces to the enemies that we're coming and to let you leave. Only Israel does it. And obviously, there's a whole way of dealing from a religious point of view with war. So let's look at what that concept is, and let's look at your work, which you want to give to every army base in Israel.
Well, so the book, the special volume on war according to halacha, is based on two extensive entries that have been written already in the Talmudic Encyclopedia, and we summarized it in a more concise way and in a more short way, and we are dealing about a specific type of war. As you may know, and your listeners may know, there are two types of war according to halacha. There's milchemet mitzvah, where we are obligated to do the war, and there's milchemet reshut, where it's optional if we should do this war or not. But among the milchemet mitzvah, there are three types that the Rambam identifies. One is the war against the 7 nations that were in Israel before Yehoshua came and conquered the land, Shivat Amamim. The second one is Amalek, that we have to be in war with them and annihilate them. And the third one is saving Israel from enemies who come to attack them. These are three types that are considered milchemet mitzvah. On the other hand, there is milchemet reshut, which is, let's say, the king wants to expand a little bit the country, so he goes to an optional war against people who he wants to conquer their land. Currently, practically speaking, there's only one type of war that can be fought nowadays. There are no more 7 nations, they disappeared. There is no more Amalek, they disappeared.
There is Amalek. We're not sure who they are, but I think Rav Soloveitchik said that those that want to annihilate the Jewish people could be in the category of Amalek. Hamas might fall in that category. I think they do.
It might, but the outcome of it would be that if you see such a person, you have to kill him. If you go in the street in New York and you identify someone who you think is falling into this category, you have to kill him.
I don't think today we're obligated to do that, even if we know somebody is Amalek, right? I'm not sure if...
No, because we don't know that he is Amalek. That's the whole thing, because they disappeared. Amalek, the real Amalek, disappeared. There's no more Amalek. All these nations got mixed up, and we don't know. But we say that someone who wants to annihilate Jews is acting like Amalek. But whether it applies the same laws of Amalek, that is still debatable. But I think practically speaking, no one would do it. Correct. On the other hand, milchemet reshut, internationally, except maybe Russia and Ukraine, is a sort of a milchemet reshut, that Russia just wanted to conquer the land. There was nothing bothering them. There were no attacks against them. They just wanted to expand their territory or to take back their territory. But we in Israel never fought a milchemet reshut. And for halachically to fight a milchemet reshut, you need a king, you need a Sanhedrin, you need Urim Vetumim. That all doesn't exist, and therefore there's no milchemet reshut. So the only war that can be fought and is regarded as milchemet mitzvah is saving Jews from the enemies that come upon them. And this war, unfortunately, is a classic example. They came on us, they killed, and we needed to respond to them. And that's a milchemet mitzvah that has a special category that has to be fought in a certain way. So, for instance, there is a debate amongst the poskim if you need to besiege the enemies. Should you leave one way for them to run away, to leave open a place? In 1982, in the First Lebanon War, that was the story in Tripoli, where Arafat and his men ran away there, and the Israeli army besieged Tripoli, and they would have been killed. But according to Arav Goren's idea that he was then the chief rabbi of the army, even in milchemet mitzvah of this type, which is saving Jews from their enemies, you must leave one way out if they want to run away.
So you're saying Rabbi Goren instructed the Israeli army, or the Israeli army, based on Rabbi Goren's dictates, allowed Yasir Arafat to escape?
Well, he said it. I assume that they wanted to do it from their point of view, not because Rav Goren said, but Rav Goren opined his view as the chief rabbi of the army. That was his opinion.
So how does it work? If the chief rabbi says it's halachically forbidden to do a certain act, does the Israeli army listen to him? Are they obligated to? They do what they feel is right? How does it work in Israel?
Well, it is really a tough question, because if they can go accordingly, then obviously they try. Mainly issues of Shabbat, let's say. If you don't have to do an exercise on Shabbat, they won't do it purposefully to do it on Shabbat. But if the rabbi says that this is a situation where you're allowed to desecrate Shabbat, then they can do it. If he says you can't do it, I don't know if he's being listened every time, but certainly it has a bearing on the soldiers. So what happened then was that Arafat fled, and all the trouble that we had later was because we left this area for him to run away. And this is a question that comes up. For instance, now in this war, they besieged Sajaiya, they besieged Jabalia, they are now besieging Khan Yunis, but they are leaving a corridor for what's called uninvolved, which I'm not sure that really they are uninvolved, the civilians there, but they are civilians and they are uninvolved, letting them flee the area and go to a safe place. And that is what's happening, and that is halachically probably the right way to do it. So that's
even a war that's obligatory, a mitzvah, you still have to leave a path open.
That's according to some poskim. Not everyone agrees.
The reason why you raise a very interesting point. In the case of Yasir Arafat, leaving a corridor open for them to leave, you allow them for another day to attack the Jewish people.
Right. So that's a problem. So Arav Israeli, for instance, disagreed with Rav Goren and wrote an extensive essay to say that in Milchemet Mitzvah, and certainly if they started the war and they killed us, we should kill them to the nth degree, because otherwise they'll restart the whole thing. So that's an interesting halachic debate, not only a tactical debate. So
it has practical implications.
To show that that's what we are dealing in this book, showing where the sources are on how to conduct a war.
Now, you want every Israeli army base to have this book, this sefer?
Well, that's the request or the asking of the current chief rabbi of the army, Rabbi Eyal Krim, who we gave as a donation 2,500 copies to the army to distribute it. There are about thousands of rabbis, of officers, of shuls, military shuls, that he wants them to have it.
So how many bases do you still have to give it to? You have 2,500. How many more do you need to distribute, and how is that going?
Well, so what we are doing now is the 2,500 we gave already to the army. In fact, tomorrow we have an official launching of this tribute that we did to the army in the base of the chief military Rabbinate, and we are publishing sets of copies in honor or in memory of certain people who fell. One of them will be for Yoni Steinberg, not related to me in a relationship, but obviously we know him, who was the colonel, the commander of the Nachal Brigade, and on Simchat Torah, he heard that there is something going on close to Gaza. He just didn't think twice. He took his army gear and he went there, and there was an ambush and he was killed. It's a very high-ranking officer, and his family is very happy that we can dedicate in his memory a set of these books. In fact, we will launch it next week in Toronto in a shul where his grandfather was one of the founders, Rabbi Eli Munk, who was one of the founders in the shul in Toronto, and that's where we are going to launch this memory edition. So we are doing it to certain people who fell, and we're dedicating some of the books.
So but there are opportunities for people who are listening and watching us to participate in dedicating volumes and being part of this whole mitzvah of giving out this special sefer.
Right. So what we are offering is partnership with everyone who wants to help the army. I know that American Jewry, Israeli Jewry, and many other places contributed a lot of money and effort for the army, but that was all Gashmi contribution. Here we are offering to give the army something more spiritual, more halachically oriented, and by participating with a donation, it will be very helpful to us to continue this work.
So how can people get involved? And this is in Hebrew, this volume. There's no English volume, right? This is just the Hebrew.
Right, just Hebrew. No, but what this is given to the army. So if someone contributes, so actually he contributes for our gift to the army, helping us to continue our work. It's not, if someone wants to purchase it, obviously he can buy it in a store. But we are talking about a donation for the sake of the army, like they donate money in order to buy
boots and all kinds of gear.
And all kinds of things.
So how can people get involved? Is there a phone number? Is there a web address? How do people...
Yes, so the one that takes care of it is Benny Gur, and I think he can send you all the material.
We'll post it. He's been on our program before. He does outstanding. Rabbi Benny Gur, major in the IDF, wounded in the Yom Kippur War, and he's very instrumental in this project. Right. Now, is the Encyclopedia Talmudic, is it in English, any of it? Is everything in Hebrew?
The Encyclopedia Talmudit is in Hebrew only. It is very, very extensive. I don't believe that translating into English will help those who don't understand the Hebrew of it, because it's really very, very deep. You have to be a learner in order to understand, so it won't be helpful. But
that same question was asked of Art Scroll. They still published in English, right? They have a whole new generation. So maybe there's a new generation of learner people who would appreciate it. English version.
A good idea, but what we are doing now, we started a project called Talmudic Micropedia, which is an abridged format of all the entries of the Talmudic Encyclopedia, and that, I believe, will be translated into English and will be very beneficial and helpful.
I want to thank you for being with us, and we hope you'll join us again. I know that you have a tremendous impact on Jewish life, both Israel and beyond. Rabbi Professor Avraham Steinberg, MD, rabbi, physician, ethicist, Israel Prize laureate, and as I said before, he has so many articles and books, 46 books and public reports in 73 volumes, so many papers and chapters in his road to national journals and books. He's on so many different committees affecting Jewish life, and he's an expert in medical ethics and dealing with war and dealing with medical issues relating to death. Thank you for joining with us, and we look forward to the honor of having you back again.
Thank you very much, and be successful.
Amen. Lamar.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.